The birthday that changed everything. The sound of laughter and children's shrieks filled my sister's living room as balloons bobbed against the ceiling, and wrapping paper piled higher by the minute. My 7-year-old niece was at the center of it all, tearing into a tower of gifts with the kind of wide-eyed joy that only children can muster. The air smelled faintly of frosting and pizza, the kind of comforting aroma that usually meant family and celebration. I stood near the edge of the room, trying to blend into the chaos while watching my niece's happiness. In my hands, I held the gift I'd chosen carefully, a professional art kit. It had cost me close to $300, but money wasn't the point. My niece loved to draw. Every time I visited, she had a sketchbook open, her pencils scattered across the floor. This gift wasn't just expensive. It was thoughtful, something to encourage her passion. I told myself that was what mattered, but deep down, I knew what was coming. My sister approached with a paper plate wobbling in her hand. A thick slice of chocolate cake balanced dangerously on it. She wore the same look I'd grown used to, tight smile, eyes glittering with something sharper than kindness. Behind her, her husband stood with folded arms, already smirking like he knew the punchline to a joke I hadn't heard yet. "Here," my sister said, thrusting the plate toward me. "Have some cake." I barely managed a polite nod before she delivered the blow. Buying things doesn't make you special. You're just the family wallet. Her husband's laughter rang out instantly, loud and mocking, filling the air like a bad song I couldn't turn off. He slapped his knee, as though her words were comedy gold. For a second, I just stared at her, sure I'd misheard. But the smug expression on her face told me I hadn't. I looked around the room, waiting for someone to step in. Maybe my dad, who was lounging in his usual corner of the couch. Our eyes met for a brief moment, but all he did was shrug. "Let it go," he muttered, as if those 3 words were enough to dissolve years of disrespect. The plate in my hands suddenly felt unbearably heavy. The cake's sweet scent turned sour in my nose. My stomach churned, not from the sugar, but from the humiliation. This wasn't the first time my family had dismissed me, but this cut deeper than usual. For years, I had been the one covering every financial shortfall, every unexpected expense. When medical bills piled up, I paid them. When their car broke down, I took care of it. Just last week, I had sent in a tuition payment for my sister's master's program, $15,000 that I could have easily used on myself, but didn't. And yet, in this moment, none of that mattered. To my sister and her husband, I wasn't a brother or brother-in-law. I was a wallet with legs. Something inside me snapped. I set the plate of cake down on the nearest table, careful not to let it slip onto the floor. Then I walked toward the gift table, where a mountain of presents waited for my niece to discover later. Tucked among them was a plain white envelope, neatly labeled with her name in my handwriting. Inside wasn't just a card. It was proof of the tuition payment I had scheduled for the next semester, a payment that hadn't been processed yet, a payment that I suddenly no longer wanted to make. I picked up the envelope, turned to face my sister and her husband, and held it up for them to see. Their grins widened, expecting me to slink away as usual, maybe toss some sarcastic comeback over my shoulder before retreating. Instead, I looked them square in the eye and said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Good luck figuring out next semester. I just canceled the payment." Silence dropped over the room like a heavy curtain. The laughter stopped. Even the kids paused their noisy play, sensing the shift in energy. Then, chaos. My brother-in-law's voice shot up an octave as panic replaced amusement. My sister sputtered, her words tripping over each other. My father tried to hush everyone, but his calm words were drowned out by the storm I had just unleashed. I didn't wait around to hear the rest. By the time I stepped out into the cool evening air, the din of their voices was muffled by the door closing behind me. My car was parked a few houses down, and as I walked, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't bother pulling it out. Inside me, a strange calm settled. For the first time in years, I had drawn a line. As I drove away from the house, the balloons still faintly visible in the rearview mirror, my phone lit up over and over again. Calls from my sister, my brother-in-law, even my dad. I ignored them all. The road stretched ahead, dark but steady. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, letting the weight of what I'd just done sink in. For years, I had thought that generosity would earn me love, that sacrifice would buy me respect. But in that single moment, standing in a living room full of laughter at my expense, I realized the truth. Respect doesn't come from money, and family doesn't mean enabling people who refuse to see your worth. That birthday party wasn't just a celebration for my niece. It was the day everything changed for me. The day the family wallet finally closed. Years of silent giving. The drive home after the birthday party was long, but not because of the distance. My thoughts were racing faster than the car itself, replaying every word my sister had thrown at me. "You're just the family wallet." Her husband's laugh echoed in my mind like an unwanted soundtrack. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my phone had over a dozen missed calls. I let them pile up. For once, I needed silence. I stepped inside, loosened my tie, and sat at my desk without even turning on the lights. The glow of my computer screen felt harsh against the dark room. I opened a folder I rarely touched. Inside was a spreadsheet I'd been keeping for the past 2 years. At first as a way to stay organized, but later because something inside me knew I'd need it one day. Every transaction was there, neatly logged with dates and notes. Mortgage payments, car repairs, emergency dental surgery, tuition installments, grocery transfers. The total stared back at me, $63,000. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of that number pressing down on my chest. $63,000. Money I could have invested, traveled with, or used to build my own future. Instead, it had disappeared into a black hole disguised as family loyalty. I remembered the first time I helped her. She was 28, newly married, and her husband had just lost his job. She called me crying, terrified of falling behind on rent. Without hesitation, I wired her the money. It felt good. It felt right. Family helps family, I told myself. Then came the tuition. She wanted to go back to school for her master's degree, and when she admitted she couldn't afford it, I offered. At first, she resisted, but eventually, she accepted. I thought I was giving her an opportunity. What I didn't realize was that I was also giving her permission to depend on me. One bailout turned into another. Rent turned into mortgage. Mortgage turned into medical bills. Soon, it wasn't just occasional help. It was expected. Like clockwork, whenever their finances faltered, my phone would buzz with a request thinly veiled as an emergency. And every time, I paid. Not once did anyone ask how it affected me. The memory burned as I stared at that spreadsheet. I thought about all the times I had cut back on my own plans. Trips I didn't take. Hobbies I abandoned. Even dating. How many times had I canceled plans because I was stressed about covering someone else's bills? The phone buzzed again, dragging me back to the present. I glanced at the caller ID. My sister. For a second, I considered answering. Instead, I let it ring. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch when I saw her. My sister, standing on the walkway, hair messy, eyes red-rimmed from crying. She wasn't dressed for a casual visit. She looked desperate. I opened the door, but didn't invite her inside. We stood there, the distance between us heavy with unspoken history. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I crossed my arms. "Here's fine." She launched into her speech. Apologies tumbled from her lips, words about being stressed, about not meaning what she said. She insisted she didn't see me as just money, that it was a stupid slip in the heat of the moment. Her voice cracked at the edges. Rehearsed yet fragile. I listened quietly, letting her finish. Then I asked one simple question. "If you didn't mean it, why did he laugh?" The silence that followed said more than her words ever could. She avoided my gaze, her shoulders tightening. I stepped inside for a moment, came back with my laptop, and opened the spreadsheet. I turned the screen toward her. "This is what I've spent on you in the last 2 years. Every dollar, every bill, every bailout. Do you see the total?" Her eyes widened. "You've been keeping track?" "Of course I have," I said evenly. "Do you know why? Because somewhere along the line, I stopped helping and started being used. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Superior, you've been treating me like a bank for years. The second I stop, I'm suddenly selfish? Do you hear yourself?" Her lips tightened. "You don't understand how hard it's been for us. You knew I'd cover the important stuff when money ran out. That's not bad luck. That's bad planning." Her face flushed with anger. "So what now? You're just cutting us off? After everything?" "Yes," I said simply. "I canceled the tuition payment. Permanently. You'll need to figure it out yourself." She blinked, stunned. Then came the tears again, but this time, they weren't convincing. "You're going to ruin me. I'm so close to graduating. How could you?" I met her gaze, my voice steady. "How could I? No. How could you humiliate me at a birthday party, in front of the entire family, after everything I've done for you?" The words hung in the air between us. She had no answer. Without another word, I stepped back inside and closed the door. Her knocks grew louder. She shouted through the wood, accusing me of being cruel, selfish, heartless. At one point, she threatened to bring the kids over so I'd feel guilty. I turned up the music until her voice faded. Eventually, she left. The silence that followed was the first peace I'd felt in years. That morning, on the porch, marked the true beginning of the shift. For the first time, I had refused to bend. For the first time, I had forced my sister to face the consequences of her own choices. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't the one ruining anything. They had ruined the relationship the moment they stopped seeing me as a brother and started seeing me as a wallet. The ripple effect. A week passed without contact, though my voicemail filled daily with messages. My sister alternated between begging and blaming, while her husband left shorter, angrier ones. I ignored them all. For the first time in years, I was holding my boundary, and I refused to let guilt pry it open. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Uncle," a small voice whispered. It was my niece. My heart softened instantly. "Hey, kiddo, what's going on?" There was a pause, then a shaky sigh. "Mom's really mad. She keeps saying you ruined everything." "But," at the party, I heard what she said. "I know she hurt you." Her honesty pierced through me. Children saw more than adults like to admit. "You didn't do anything wrong," I assured her gently. "None of this is your fault." "But my school emailed Mom," she whispered. "They said if the payment isn't made, I'll get suspended until tuition is cleared." The words hit me like a brick. For a moment, guilt surged. the instinct to fix things, to grab my wallet and make it right. But then, I remembered the spreadsheet, the laughter, the disrespect. I steadied my voice. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle," I said carefully. "But it's not my responsibility anymore. Your mom and dad will figure it out." She sniffled, then whispered, "I think they're scared." I closed my eyes, my chest tight. Scared or not, this was their problem to solve, not mine. "I love you," I told her, "and I'll always be here for you in ways that matter. But I can't keep paying for things that aren't mine to pay." 2 days later, my father showed up at my door. No call, no warning. Just his heavy knock that carried decades of authority. When I opened the door, he wasted no time. "What the hell is going on?" he barked. I sighed, gesturing for him to sit on the porch. He refused, standing tall, as if proximity alone could intimidate me back into compliance. "Your sister is falling apart," he said. "Her tuition's on hold, her husband's threatening to take out loans they can't afford, and your niece is crying every night. You have the means. Why would you choose now to pull the rug out from under them?" I stared at him, anger bubbling in my chest. "Because I've already given them $63,000. Did she tell you that?" His brow furrowed. "That's an exaggeration." I opened my laptop, pulled up the spreadsheet, and shoved it toward him. "Not an exaggeration. Every transfer, every bill, every single dollar logged." He leaned closer, his eyes scanning the screen. With each line, his expression shifted, from doubt to surprise to a quiet, uncomfortable shame. "I never knew," he muttered. "Of course you didn't," I snapped. "Because no one ever asks me how I'm doing. I'm just expected to show up with my wallet. When she called crying, I answered. When her husband messed up, I cleaned it up. I sacrificed years of my own future to hold theirs together. And what did I get in return? A public humiliation at a child's birthday party." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, my father, stoic, stubborn, unflinching, had no defense. "She said you were cruel," he finally managed. "She said I was cruel because I finally said no," I corrected. "There's a difference." He sank into the porch chair then, his posture heavy, as though the truth itself weighed him down. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the chirping of birds and the distant hum of traffic. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. "I should have seen it. I thought she was managing. I thought you were just helping here and there." I softened slightly, but not enough to back down. "You wanted to believe that, because it was easier than facing the truth. She's been drowning for years, but instead of learning to swim, she kept grabbing me as a life raft. And every time I went under, no one noticed." His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something I had longed for: recognition. Later that week, I received another call, this time from my niece again. "Uncle," she said, her voice steadier. "I asked Mom why she said those things to you. She cried. She said she didn't mean it. But I told her I heard the way everyone laughed. I told her it wasn't fair." I sat in stunned silence, her words echoing. Children had a way of cutting through excuses. "What did she say?" I asked. "She hugged me and said she messed up. But she's really scared about school." I told her maybe it's her turn to be strong instead of asking you. My throat tightened. My niece, barely a teenager, was articulating what no adult had dared to. "You're wise beyond your years," I told her. "Don't ever lose that." The ripple effect was undeniable now. My refusal to pay had shaken the foundation of my sister's household, forced my father to confront uncomfortable truths, and opened my niece's eyes to the reality of how her parents operated. For years I thought money was the glue that held my family together. But now I realized it was actually the wedge driving us apart. Every dollar I gave postponed their growth, deepened their dependence, and buried the resentment I felt. And the moment I stopped, everything cracked wide open. For the first time in a long time, I felt something unexpected. Not guilt, not anger, relief. Lessons, boundaries, and change. The weeks after the confrontation unfolded like the slow turning of seasons. At first, the air was heavy with anger and blame. My sister left furious voicemails, her husband threatened legal action, and my father alternated between quiet shame and awkward attempts to smooth things over. But time has a way of sanding down sharp edges. Slowly, their fury dulled, replaced by the cold reality of bills and overdue notices. Without my safety net, my sister and her husband had no choice but to face the life they had built. Word reached me through the family grapevine. They had put their house up for sale, the big two-story with the open kitchen and vaulted ceilings. The one they bought during a streak of reckless optimism was too much to manage without outside help. They downsized to a modest apartment across town. Her husband, once proud and dismissive, took on a second job. Night shifts at a warehouse, according to my cousin. My sister, instead of relying on part-time tutoring, accepted a full-time administrative role at a local firm. The work wasn't glamorous, and the pay wasn't much, but it was steady. It wasn't easy for them, I knew, but it was theirs. For the first time, their survival depended on their own hands, not mine. My father came around more often during that time, no longer booming with authority, but quieter, more reflective. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he sat across from me on the porch, nursing a cup of tea. I was wrong, he admitted, his voice gravelly. I thought I was protecting your sister by letting you handle it all, but I was just enabling her and hurting you. Hearing those words from him, stubborn, old-fashioned, proud, felt like a balm on an old wound. For years, I had longed for recognition, for someone to see the sacrifices I had made. Now, finally, I had it. You can't protect someone from their own choices, I said quietly. All you can do is let them learn. He nodded, eyes downcast, as though the weight of his own regrets pressed on him. I should have been a better father to both of you. It wasn't an apology, not in the traditional sense, but it was close enough. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the anger I carried toward him loosen its grip. Then, one Saturday morning, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, my niece stood there, holding a small envelope. I made you something, she said shyly, pressing it into my hand. Inside was a card she had drawn herself. On the front was a sketch of me, her, and her mom, standing together. Above us, in uneven but careful handwriting, she had written, "Family is more than money." My throat tightened as I read it. Inside, she had written a simple note. I'm sorry Mom hurt you. Thank you for loving us even when things got hard. Tears blurred my vision. I crouched down, pulling her into a hug. This means more to me than you'll ever know, I whispered. She squeezed me back, then added, Mom's trying harder now. She's different. I think she knows she messed up. Months passed. My sister didn't call me for money again. Sometimes she called just to talk, sometimes to ask advice, sometimes simply to check in. The conversations were stiff at first, but gradually the edges softened. Trust, once broken, was not easily rebuilt. But it was not impossible, either. Her husband, to my surprise, showed a new kind of respect. At a family gathering, he approached me quietly, no bravado, no jokes. I didn't realize how much you carried, he said. I should have been grateful instead of laughing. I was wrong. It wasn't a friendship, but it was a start. The true turning point came on the day my sister finally graduated. She didn't cross the stage in an expensive gown funded by my bank account. She walked proudly in a simple rented cap and gown, her tuition covered by grants, loans, and her own hard-earned paycheck. I sat in the audience, clapping as loud as anyone. Not because I had paid for it. This time I hadn't, but because she had. After the ceremony, she found me in the crowd. For a moment, we just looked at each other, years of tension compressed into silence. Then she said, "I'm sorry. For everything. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I want you to know I'm finally standing on my own 2 feet." I searched her face. For once, I didn't see entitlement or expectation. I saw humility, growth. "I'm glad," I said simply. And I meant it. Looking back, it still amazes me how one cruel sentence at a birthday party unraveled years of silence. "You're just the family wallet." At the time, it felt like an insult. Now, I see it as the moment everything changed, because in the end, it forced me to draw a line. To stop confusing financial sacrifice with love. To realize that real family isn't measured in dollars, but in respect, honesty, and growth. I still help my niece when I can, with school projects, with advice, with showing up at her recitals. But never again with tuition checks. And when I think about my sister, I don't see her as the person who drained me for years. I see her as someone who stumbled, who leaned too heavily, but who eventually learned to stand tall again. As for me, I finally learned the truth I should have known all along. Money doesn't define love. Boundaries do.